Police officers, investigators, etc. What are your, holy shit, this criminal is smart, moments? Guy found out that when a gas station lost its satellite connection, it automatically accepted all credit cards, and would presumably process them later. So, he climbed on the roof and covered the dish with foil to force it to lose connection, then made charges on a card that was cancelled. Many years ago, probably 20-ish, my dad used to own this company and one of his employees died in a car accident. In the next few days my dad received the work logs and books and things that this guy would have kept with him, and that's when my dad realized this guy was doing offline transactions, what they had to do when a client needed something after hours. I'm not exactly sure how it worked. It was something to do with the physical receipt layout, but he would overcharge X amount for the item, get to work and input Y amount paid and have the correct receipt, and pocket the difference. He had been doing this for years and years and my dad didn't realize. Not exactly the smartest, but he was never caught. My dad decided not to say anything to the family or anything like that. My old boss was a major thief with two of his close friends in my small city. They all worked normal jobs at areas where they could talk to people, waiting tables and things like that. Every year when Christmas or another break like holiday they would case out frat, sorority houses, and while everyone is seeing family, they'd clean them out. Would go by storage units and look for things like cigarette butts around them and assume people probably practice playing music and store instruments there. Since clearly they're there often enough to hang around and smoke. One of them got pinched when he tried to sell an expensive guitar at a music shop and it was the shop owner's stolen guitar. Thinking quickly, he said how he had bought the guitar from a guy named, let's say, Steve. Gave the cops all the info since he had been working with Steve at the restaurant waiting tables. Well, Steve actually just died about a week before in a car wreck, so no charges on anyone. They had ATVs, motorcycles, every video game console, TVs, instruments, etc. When they were finally busted selling a four-wheeler to a sheriff's daughter, the other detective who investigated Steve told them that was a pretty clever idea, sending them after a dead man. Then they all went to prison for about 4 years. Okay, not a police officer here. Worked in a corporate hair salon. We had a class on loss prevention at one time and the lady that came to talk about what constitutes as theft with employees. One story she told us was about another salon, located somewhere else, where the stylists themselves were stealing money right from the company. Out of 5 stylists, 4 of them were scamming the company. Instead of running credit card payments through the corporate credit card system on the POS, they would tell the clients the CC system was down, and they would have to run the card through another CC system. Each of the 4 stylists had Square devices that they each set up like their own business, so the charges went straight to their own bank accounts, and then the service would either be cancelled or show up as a no-show. They finally got caught when a customer called corporate to complain about her service and was wanting a refund. The transaction was nowhere to be found. The sad thing was one of the stylists was the salon manager, who ended up going to prison for 3 years plus having to pay restitution. I'm not sure what the other 3 got, but I'm sure they all lost their jobs. Just blows the mind the things people will come up with. A bank in my hometown was robbed by a group of individuals during a historic snowstorm. We got approximately 12 feet in 2 days, and early in the storm the bank was still open. Couple people just walked in masked with guns, robbed the place and escaped on foot. Police response time was about 45 minutes at best, and by the time they arrived on scene the tracks were gone. Long shot, but pure genius. I love stories about criminals, by the way. This is one of my favorites. https://www.cbc.ca/news/canada/ottawa/ottawa-mint-gold-stolen-guilty-1.3843169, but he was stupid when selling them and cashing the checks. I'm not a cop, but my friend who worked at Best Buy used to do a pretty clever scheme. It's kinda fucked up, but we were in college and our moral code wasn't exactly honorable at the time. Usually during the holidays there is a deal where if you buy a certain TV you get a gift card, something like $10-$20. This wasn't really heavily advertised, but a salesman would likely tell this to a customer to get them to buy a TV. Well, this my friend wouldn't tell the customer. He would just sell the TV and pocket the gift card. However, He knew that each gift card was scanned and tied to that customer's transaction, and him, since he sold the TV. So what he would do is wait until he had a few cards, and then get into a coworker's computer session, and buy one large gift card using the smaller gift cards. Now he could use the larger card for whatever purchases he wants without it really being tracked back to him. Never got caught, and I was always impressed he could pull this off. I am not a police officer but knew a doctor who was kind of a scam artist. It was a bit odd because he was a brilliant doctor and made so many people's lives better that people were so grateful they were always throwing money at him. Anyway, he ran a motor vehicle accident rehabilitation clinic, and he paid police officers a referral fee for any accident victims that they sent his way. It was something like $500 CAD, which sounds like a lot, but each client was worth tens of thousands of dollars to the clinic. He also literally hired one of the guys who wrote the actual tax code, for an accountant, lawyer, so he would get away with so much slimy stuff, but I'm sure the revenue agency knew who he hired, so they were like, yeah, that guy is untouchable, don't waste your time. My father ran film developing businesses and photography studios back in the 80s and 90s. That industry didn't age well into the 21st century. Open-mouth smile. He hired a young employee who was a brilliant salesman, and the business grew into school pictures and wedding bookings soared, as did military events and running the color lab for several local newspapers. This guy could sell anything but was a horrible photographer and couldn't run a lab, so he stayed in sales end of the business. He offered to have his tax guy to the business taxes as a steep discount, so they changed tax preparers. Immediately after the quarterly employment and business taxes went off, this guy flipped. He refused to sell, yelled at customers, didn't answer the phones, and opened film canisters, spoiling 2 weddings from the previous weekend which had to be restaged and reshot. Any idea how much it costs to restage an entire wedding? Imagine buying 2 complete weddings and paying to rent all new tuxes, rent the same space and pretend to do the wedding all over to get photographs, including buying airfare for family across the country. We fired the guy and were immediately sued. He paid his accountant on the back end to refile taxes as a partnership, not a sole proprietorship, and then took claim to half the assets of the business. He walked out with $250,000 in photographic equipment and color lab machines, sold his assets for cash and disappeared. We found out much later that the same man, his accountant and his attorney, pulled the same scam with a car stereo company, a construction company, a muffler shop and a taco franchise over the next 10 years. Very methodical and long game scam. Get in, get your accountant to get the business, file as a partnership without them knowing, get fired and sue. He did that again and again, moving cities but keeping his attorney and accountant paid on the back end. My best friend growing up is a detective and had a crazy story. A couple worked at the Walmart home office annex dedicated to the startup of the Walmart self-checkout for Level 1 tech. Store employees would work them to fix problems at the machines. A few months after they got fired, they started going to Walmart and scanning crazy amounts of stuff to self-checkout, and walk out without paying. With a receipt. What they did, they would put scotch tape on one of the scanners so when the associate tried to scan their badge it wouldn't work. The workers had to input their 4-digit ID into the computer to put up the assistance menu. And from there they would scan the item. These two knew how the system worked and would simple watch and see the code. When the associate would leave, they would get back into the menu and cancel the entire order. This would print a suspended transaction receipt, which looked the exact same as a normal receipt except it says *** suspended transaction * at the very bottom. They didn't get caught for over a year. I'll tell on myself if you guys wanna, wow, that person kind of sucks, type of story. When I was younger, 16 to 21, I worked at an Italian restaurant that paid me cash and kept out a portion for taxes, barf anyways. I worked there for 5 years and around year 2 when I totaled the amount of money they kept that should have paid, I felt cheated, even though I was supposed to pay taxes, also. I had a vague idea on what taxes were but not a great understanding. I knew enough to know they didn't pay taxes on their business though. Being immigrants, they had a grant allowing them to not pay taxes the first 2 years they were open. I basically was mad they were scamming me even though I was also scamming the government. I was young and just didn't know it was as big of a deal as it is, and in my mind, I felt like if anyone deserved to keep the money it was me, not them. I was basically unemployed for 5 years because I was never on their books. Anyways, I started getting mad because there was only 3 servers including me and I did a lot around the store. Ordering beer, food, writing the checks for the linens and other supplies, working 10 to 10 the 5 days I worked. I was severely underpaid. We used handwritten tickets and no POS system, so I started completely pocketing certain cash-paid tickets. When I rang out the cash people, I would put it to the side and pocket it after they left and throw away both receipts, the kitchen's copy and mine. Also, when people paid card, I would have to manually enter the total amount paid including tip at the end of the night, and then enter the amount paid for just the meal, so they knew what the tip was. On bigger checks, I would change the total for the food and drink by a few dollars under the actual cost so I got a bigger tip. The owners were so negligent with their business they never knew. I would like to say that I never once stole from an innocent person or patron, just the people that were scamming me. Looking back, I can't believe how much authority I had and how much they believed in me to not do the things that they were. I was so brazen and unafraid because I felt indignant towards them. Even on the day I rage quit, I wrote up a to-go ticket for a huge order, like 3 XL pizzas, several of my favorite dishes, and desserts, and when the owner went upstairs for his daily nap with a woman that was not his wife, I loaded up my car with cases of wine and all the food I had made for the make-believe to-go order. I didn't have to buy groceries for days. Even though they are scam artists in their own right, I do feel pretty bad about what I did and would never do that again. Not a cop, but I liked this old story. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Anthony_Curcio about an armored truck robber who covered his tracks by first placing a Craigslist ad to get a bunch of suspects to show up to an imaginary construction job near the scene of the crime dressed like him. Yellow vest, safety goggles, blue shirt, respirator mask, work boots. In the 2000s you could order a new credit card, not activate it, and then when you were on a long-haul flight you could upgrade via the card machine to first class once on board and then pay for the premium service, and when the flight landed and got internet connection none of the purchases would be successful and you would already be out of the airport. I never understood how they couldn't find you afterwards with your passport and credit card details, but it was a big fraudulent scam that hit the newspapers multiple times. Maybe because apart from witness testimonies there wasn't a sufficient paper trail to say that you were upgraded or had any of the expensive champagne or duty-free. A very clever criminal was stealing electricity for his nightclub in Liverpool. The power company knew something was happening because as soon as this guy took over their usage was about a quarter of the previous owner. They finally sent an old guy out to check the meter for problems. He discovered that they'd fitted a pressure switch on the door so that when it was opened the meter turned as normal, but as soon as you closes it the meter would stop turning. 2 years they'd been investigating before he was caught out. A few years back my elderly neighbor's home robbed. Her husband had just passed away and the obituary was in the paper with showing times and time the burial ceremony was to start. These lowlifes looked up her husband's address in the phone book and knew exactly what time their house would be unoccupied. They took absolutely everything of value from this lady on the day she was putting her husband in the ground. And they never caught them. I was an assistant manager at a little deli corner store for a few years and one of the employees bragged that he was getting a bag of weed a week from the store for free. Not to me but to other employees. I couldn't figure out how. The numbers always matched up. He was also really successful with one of our couponing programs. It took me a while to figure out that our POS system would take the coupon without the UPC being scanned. In other words, the coupons were essentially cash. He was cashing out till the $80 a week in coupons. The kid was pretty smart. I only found out when I was doing RHE inventory and the books the same week. I saw that we sold a ton of ice cream, and thought, geez, I am gonna have to restock the crap out of that. Then realized that it was fully stocked and put 2 and 2 together. Long time ago, friend of mine used to be in a professional car thief group. They would steal 70s to 80s model cars and trucks, strip them down, repaint, decorate, then sell them. The state next to theirs had this weird thing where if a car was wrecked, it went to the junkyard but the title was never marked at totaled, destroyed. It's been changed. So they would go buy these wrecks for next to nothing, get a clean title, swap the VIN, scrap the wreck at a metal yard, sell the newly VIN-ed car at normal price to regular people. When I asked what made him quit, he laughed and said, "The local district attorney." Turns out the DA was looking for a Camaro for his wife and said Buddy had a newly, minty fresh one with low miles for sale. DA along with his sheriff buddy knocked on friend's door to take it for a test ride. At which point said friend shit his pants. Not only was the Camaro hot, the other car in his garage 3 feet away was in the middle of a rebuild, and the truck out front had just been picked up. He was 100% convinced he was screwed beyond belief, but they took the car for a spin, loved it and paid cash for the Camaro. Friend had a come-to-Jesus moment. Saw the error of his thieving ways, took everything automotive at his house to the scrapyard, then went and bought a legit car. All that very day. My dad is an attorney and had 2 clients. One who had an old huge Chevy Nova with a very well hidden switch under the dash. He would flip the switch and the brake lights off, then go in front of someone and hit the brakes. Won several claims from insurance companies. The second one was flying into small international airports carrying normal checked bags. Flew in from Canada every time, small puddle jumpers. Turns out what he was actually doing was smuggling immense amounts of cocaine. He refused to say a word to cops or in his own trial. Just pled out, and went to jail. My dad gets a single check to pay for his service of sitting and doing the plea deal. About half of his normal yearly earnings. Turns out the guy was S***N** muggling for Pablo Escobar, and would have been killed if he talked. Remember those Subway restaurant stamps? You got one or a few with your sub. Could fill out a card of like 8 or 10, then get a free footlong or something. Well, in the late 90s my friend had a really high DPI scanner and started scanning his stamps. He then started printing them out, and used a hole to match the stamp perforations. He did the same for the yellow stamp cards you were supposed to stick them on. Before you know it, he had stacks of fully filled out cards, free subs abound. So he started giving those away at school, and we'd all get free subs, making sure to change the specific Subway every day. Eventually they caught on. They reviewed a bunch of camera footage and found him, at least, found him on film. Some basic kid in a hat. It was on the news, the Subway scammer, but they never actually ID'd him. They did, however, shut down that stamp system. Sorry folks. But then he took that to the next level, and started doing some really dumb shit. He started scanning money. He would print the money and treat the paper somehow to make it feel right. He would then sneak out in the middle of the night. This is high school still. Go to raves, buy lots of drugs with fake money, change his cloths, sell drugs for real money at same rave, and then bounce. He made a lot of money this way. Eventually, though, he was caught. He had actually wised up and decided to stop. He had shredded all his fake money printouts, and had them in his car. He was going to put them in a dumpster, but decided it would first be a good idea to smoke a joint in his car, in a Walmart parking lot. Cops pull up, search his car. He is in deep shit because of the fake money. They raid his house, take his and his dad's PCs, etc. He got expelled, but managed to stay out of jail since he was 17. Thanks for watching. See you later.